All right, everybody. Welcome in June 17th. It's a Monday. Excuse me, on the Black and Gold Breakdown. Jared Bailey with you as always. And if you if you watched Thursday's show, because remember we took Friday off just because I needed to recharge. It was just a little bit burnout. Not necessarily of this, just of work in general. Just a lot of football stuff for me over the last few weeks with mini camp and OTAs and just this. I just needed a day where I didn't do anything football related. So, and then Trevor Lawrence got paid, and then I wrote about that anyway. So, NFL never sleeps. But if you tuned into Thursday's show, you saw me go on, kind of draw a line in the sand. I said, I'm not going to talk about Brandon Aiyuk anymore. And then Brandon Aiyuk today posted a TikTok because we can't patrol his likes anymore. Remember that? Because Twitter took away that feature where you can see everybody else's likes. And so Brandon Aiyuk posted a TikTok of him on FaceTime with Washington Commanders quarterback Jayden Daniels. Those two were teammates at Arizona State during Jayden Daniels' freshman year and Brandon Aiyuk's senior year. And so they've been, friends for a while. And he posted a video of him on FaceTime with Jayden Daniels saying, "They don't want me back." Now we can all make the connections here and connect the dots. When he says they, he's more than likely referring to the San Francisco 49ers. Now, in terms of wanting him back, I would assume it doesn't mean that the 49ers don't want him back, period. I think that it would mean that they don't want him back for the money that he wants. And so that didn't take long before people started connecting some dots and saying, hey, Steelers back in the Brandon Aiyuk hunt. And now these conversations are going to pick back up. So I figured we may as well just get ahead of the curve and jump on it for this show, considering that plenty of people, I assume, are going to talk about it. And we're going to comment about it anyway. So I figured we might as well just do it. I wrote about the overall plan for the Steelers should they trade for Brandon Aiyuk today on Behind the Steel Curtain. And because if they do make this trade, one, I mean, it's a big statement saying, what, we said that we want to win now. All the things that we've done this offseason have said that, and now we're going to really add on to that. We're going to plant our flag and say, we are here to win now. We are getting Brandon Aiyuk. And then you go from there. But for me, this wouldn't just be about this season trading for Brandon Aiyuk. There would be, in my mind, there would have to be a long-term plan here. And so trading for Brandon Aiyuk, it helps this season and beyond because you're going to be able to find out real quick, okay, show us what you got, Russell Wilson. You got George Pickens, Brandon Aiyuk, an improved offensive line, and a top 5 defense in the NFL. Show us that you should be here for, past 2024. And if you don't, okay, Justin Fields, show us that you deserve to be here past 2024. And so making a move like this would help exponentially for the Steelers. Where, yeah, obviously adding a good player, a great player even, if you can do that, there's obvious benefits to that. But the fact that you can quickly find out, it's similar to what they're doing. Where the Titans are like, all right, Will Levis, you got DeAndre Hopkins. We're also going to get you Calvin Ridley. We're going to get you Tyler Boyd. Going to bring in Tony Pollard to match with Tyjae Spears. Going to make some defensive improvements and trade for L'Jarius Sneed. Like, we are going to put as great a team around you as we can so we can figure out real quick how good you are. And if we find out pretty quick that you're not great, well, okay, then we'll try again with a different quarterback. And I think the Steelers need to very much take a play out of the Titans book, as well as the Rams book. I said that if they have to give up the A.J. Brown package to get Brandon Aiyuk, which is a first and a third, you do it. Because if you don't, then you're taking a receiver in the first round next year anyway. And so basically you're just trading a third at that point for Brandon Aiyuk. Okay, that's fine. And a lot of people are pushing back. Oh, you can't give up a first round pick. Yeah, you can. We got to stop overvaluing draft capital. Got to do it. You cannot keep doing this, because when people do that, it becomes the living version of the Family Guy mystery box thing. We're like, oh my goodness, this draft pick, this wide receiver could be anything. It could even be Brandon Aiyuk. Well, then why not just go get Brandon Aiyuk? It's just, you got to stop overvaluing draft capital. Trade for players that are great. Look at the different receivers that have been acquired for first round picks over the past few years. Stephon Diggs, Tyreek Hill, A.J. Brown, DJ Moore as of late too. All of them made their offenses significantly better. For Stephon Diggs, it resulted in multiple deep playoff runs for the Bills, an AFC Championship game appearance. For the Eagles, the first year with A.J. Brown, they went to the Super Bowl. Like, it made them that much better. Now, I'm not saying that Brandon Aiyuk will automatically make the Steelers a Super Bowl team, but it puts them a hell of a lot closer. And again, it helps you figure out if any of these quarterbacks are worth your time long term. And if they're not, then and then guess what? There's going to be a perfectly good Dak Prescott, more than likely, on the open market next year that you can go pursue. And for all the people that I know are going to slide in the comments and be like, oh, Dak Prescott, you can't go and get Dak Prescott. Why would you want Dak Prescott? Well, who are you going to be able to get that's better than him? I'll wait. I'm not going to be able to get anybody better than him, because nobody that's better than him is going to be on the open market or in the trade market. So a lot of people say, oh, Justin Herbert. The Chargers aren't trading Justin Herbert. They're not doing it. That would be so much dead money. And Jim Harbaugh doesn't take that job if Justin Herbert isn't the quarterback. If it's just some mediocre mid quarterback, he's staying in Michigan. They paid Justin Herbert. He's staying with the Chargers. So name me a quarterback better than Dak Prescott that you can get next year. And by the way, you can't do the draft again. Not right now. Because TJ Watt's going to be 30 this season. Minkah Fitzpatrick going to be 28 and is already coming off an injury-riddled season. They aren't getting younger. So if you figure out that Russ and Fields both aren't the guys, then go get Dak. And I also don't want to hear about the playoff stuff. And while that's a valid argument, and I get it, you know who else didn't have a ton of you know who had zero playoff success before he got traded? Matthew Stafford. And then in year one, he won a Super Bowl. Like, situations matter. The Cowboys might be, a popular brand and everything. They haven't been a well-run franchise. Dak Prescott just led the NFL in touchdown passes. And in terms of overall quarterback play, I would say he's probably a top 10 to 12 quarterback. If you wanted to just say top 10, I wouldn't argue with you. But you're not going to find anybody who's available next year that's better at the quarterback position than Dak. And it looks like he's going to be available. I've said it for the past few months. I don't think that he should re-sign with the Cowboys. I don't think he's going to re-sign with the Cowboys. And so if Dak Prescott's available, and if you're the Steelers and you say, well, Russell Wilson and Justin Fields just both aren't it, let's go get Dak Prescott on top of having just traded for Brandon Aiyuk, you got the money to do it. Because going into next offseason, they are going to have two big contracts on their books. And that's going to be the Watt contract and the Minkah deal. Outside of that, Cam Hayward's not on the books next year. James Daniels isn't on the books next year. Those are your other two bigger contracts. Isaac Samalo still will be, but he's your best offensive lineman. Obviously, you're going to keep him. Larry Ogunjobi's going to be, but I'm pretty sure they can cut him and save money next year. So that's more money that you can free up. Spotrac has them at around a projected $89 million in free cap space next offseason. Now, they're going to pay Pat Freiermuth. It's not going to be a massive contract, though. I mean, he's a tight end, and it's not as if he's been elite yet. So they can get him on a fairly respectable deal. Jalen Warren's not going to cost you a ton of money to keep him around. So even then, they're still going to have a ton of money available. And for everybody that's going to freak out about the cap space. So overall cash and cap hit are two completely different things. Like Jared Goff is making $80 million this year in total cash, which is the most in the NFL. But his cap hit is only 10th amongst quarterbacks. And next year's cap hit is 16th. So there's ways that you can divvy up the money, roster bonuses, signing bonus, things of that nature, to keep it off the cap. You can do that with both Aiyuk and Dak to have enough cap space to have other players around you. So if you do trade for Aiyuk, it's not just for this season. And look, it'll help him out this season tremendously. I know I'm talking a lot about the future and everything, but this season, if we're just talking about this season, yeah, it obviously helps. That's your absolutely predominant number one wide receiver. He is tremendous. He was 52nd in routes run last season and 7th in receiving yards. He made the most out of his routes. Let me highlight Last King of Scotland here. Thank you for the super chat, my good friend. The running game propelled the Eagles to the Super Bowl, not a wide receiver. Wide receiver is the least important position on a football team. Pittsburgh has enough at wide receiver to win. I'm going to disagree. They don't get to the Super Bowl without A.J. Brown. He was tremendous that season. He's been tremendous. I don't think the Steelers have enough to get to the Super Bowl right now. Because, again, if something were to happen to Pickens, or if you're a team, you just say, okay, we'll just double George Pickens. Go ahead, Van Jefferson, beat us. Go ahead, Quez Watkins, beat us. You need receivers in today's NFL. Now, I will say this. Kansas City just did it, and they had one. They had Rashee Rice. Travis Kelce obviously is, basically their number one target. But in terms of like perimeter receivers, they had Rashee Rice. And I'll say this, though. A lot of things can be covered when you have Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. So it's hard to, just say, oh, well, the Chiefs did it. That's like saying, well, the Patriots did it. Two very different things, So I think that the Eagles don't make it to the Super Bowl without A.J. Brown. And I do think that Pittsburgh should. Now, it's not to say that the run game didn't help Philadelphia. Obviously, it did. They were the best run team in the NFL that season. But, I don't think that they quite make it there without A.J. Brown. But thank you so much for the super chat. I appreciate you watching and subscribing and all of that. Omar's burner. People forget when mentioning the cap that Omar Khan made his way to general manager seat from the financial side. I think he knows how to make it work. Yeah. And again, I wrote about it today because I know a lot of people are like, how are you going to pay, top tier quarterback money and top tier wide receiver money? There's ways that you divvy it up. And by the way, we've seen lesser teams somehow find a way to make the cap work. Hell, the whole meme about the Saints over the past few years is like, yeah, they're not very good, but they've handed out a ton of money and they've made it work and they somehow get under the cap. It's because you can convert money to different things, roster bonuses and things of that nature and make it work. The 49ers, I mean, hell, they've got a ton of great players on their roster right now. Now, obviously, not having a big quarterback contract helps with that, but it's not as if they don't have big deals on their books right now. You got Fred Warner, you got Christian McCaffrey now, Deebo Samuel. Like, it's not as if they don't have big contracts, but they make it work. Detroit, Baltimore, Kansas City all played in the Final Four with one good wide receiver. Let me dissect that real quick. Because each of them had different aspects that were tremendously great. So the Lions, Jared Goff threw for 4,600 yards because they also had a really good tight end in Sam Laporta. Obviously, Amon-Ra is elite. George Pickens isn't Amon-Ra St. Brown. So I think the Steelers have a very good receiver. I don't think that they have a great receiver. Baltimore is an interesting case because obviously Lamar is a tremendous athlete and tremendous dual threat at the quarterback position, and their defense was out of this world last year. Like, you look at the playoff game against Houston, Lamar and the offense didn't play all that great, but the defense beat the hell out of Houston. And so, and you even look at Baltimore's biggest wins last year. Like, against Seattle, they just beat the hell out of Seattle's offense. Against Detroit, I mean, Rashad Bateman had a slant that he took like 80 yards, but it's not as if Rashad Bateman's great. So for like Baltimore, I think a lot of it was they have a top 10 quarterback who's just MVP. The Steelers don't have that. And Kansas City, the Steelers don't have Mahomes and Andy Reid. So what the Steelers lack in terms of, okay, they don't have, the best play caller and play designer in the NFL or the best quarterback in the NFL. They don't have a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. Now, they do have a great defense, but again, Baltimore had the combination of a top 10 quarterback and a great defense, as well as a tremendous run game. Detroit, tremendous 1-2 punch at running back and an elite receiver, as well as an elite play caller in Ben Johnson and a defense that was pretty good. So for Pittsburgh, like, they have a good receiver, okay? They have 2 good running backs. They have an offensive line that we assume will be better, but it's not Detroit's offensive line, which is the best in the NFL. Now, their defense is going to be tremendous, we expect. But there were things that all 3 of those teams had last year that the Steelers don't currently have. Now, look, San Francisco is, a pretty prime example of, okay, they had Aiyuk, who's a great receiver, Debo, who's a really good player. I wouldn't call Debo like a great just receiver by himself. I think he's a good receiver, but the best dual threat skill guy in the NFL. Kittle, good defense. So all of them, yeah, like you could say they only had 1 good receiver, but it was made up in other parts of the field that Pittsburgh doesn't have. And so, if you don't have a great quarterback, what helps make a quarterback better? Well, if you get them really good playmakers. So that's my, I guess my pushback on that. I saw some more comments up here. We'll get to these as well. Worthy says, "Hey Jarrett, hi Worthy, how you doing?" Steelberg, you think we'll see even more of a double team on GP this year? I think regardless if it's not Aiyuk, they're going to get somebody. Now we've said that for the past 3 months. That's been, if it's not Aiyuk, it'll be somebody. But in this case, in terms of the double team stuff, it would be so much better if it was Aiyuk, because Aiyuk's going to draw more attention than Pickens. And if Aiyuk's drawing attention underneath, then that, especially in an offense that's going to want to run the ball early, get into 2nd and 3, 2nd and 2. If you got Brandon Aiyuk drawing a lot of attention on 2nd and 2, and you roll play action, it's George Pickens in single coverage downfield, hell, you like those odds. So, I mean, if I'm George Pickens, I would love to have Brandon Aiyuk come, because it's going to free up more opportunities for me. He said, "Does the NFL and NBA reward teams for making swings?" Yeah, to an extent. Look, have there been swings and misses? Yeah, sure. But usually in those types of cases, it's when we see like fine to good players get paid great player money. Like the Giants, when they paid Kenny Golladay 4 years, $72 million a few years ago. Like, I liked Kenny Golladay in Detroit. I don't think he was worth that. And they quickly found out that he wasn't worth that. So, when you take big swings on certain things, that don't warrant big swings, then yeah, usually that'll nip you in the butt. But the Steelers, I saw somebody else had said to me, the Steelers aren't going to pay, a wide receiver $30 million. They're not going to do this. They're not going to do that. Guys, we spent all off season from beginning to now saying, oh, the Steelers aren't going to, make a noteworthy move at quarterback. It's just going to be Kenny Pickett again. Well, then they traded Kenny Pickett after signing Russell Wilson, and then they traded for Justin Fields. And then on top of that, they traded Deontay Johnson. Oh, well, they're not going to do anything in free agency. Oh, then they spent the most money in free agency that they ever have. Like, so many different precedents have already been set by Pittsburgh this offseason. Like, Omar Khan is not Kevin Colbert. Okay, these aren't your father's Pittsburgh Steelers, where things aren't going to be active in the offseason. They're just going to build through the draft and say to hell with free agency and to hell with trading for players. Like, you can't win that way anymore. Frankly, you can't. Like, you got to be willing to go out and spend some money. You got to be willing to make some trades. And they have a general manager who's willing to do both of those now. And I think an owner who now realizes, okay, we got to get with the times and, open up the checkbook a little bit. Now, again, do I think that the Steelers are a Super Bowl contender right now? No. Now, a lot of that hinges on the fact I don't know what the quarterbacks are going to look like. If you follow my content for a while, what do I say? Tell me how good the quarterback is, and I'll tell you how far you can go. So, not knowing how good Russ and or Justin Fields are, that's going to, limit how good I think that they can be. However, they won 10 games last year with a bottom 3 quarterback room. And so I think that they'll win at least that many with improvements at offensive coordinator and quarterback and offensive line and defense. So I think they'll win at least that. But in terms of the postseason, I'm not going to sit here and say I think they're a Super Bowl contender because I don't know what their quarterback situation looks like. I think it's going to be better because that's such a low bar. And as long as it's adequate, I think that they'll win at least 10 games because that's what they won last year while dealing with plenty of injuries on the defensive side. I don't know how the hell that team won 10 games, guys. Look at all the injuries on defense, too. Like, TJ was healthy all year, minus the last game of the year. So that helped. But elsewhere, Holcomb went down. Alexander went down. They were on like their 5th safety because Casey got suspended. Minka got hurt. I think Elijah Riley at some point got hurt with Trenton Thompson. Our cornerback stunk outside of Joey Porter. I don't know how the hell that team won 10 games, but they somehow did. And so it's just hard for me to think that they'll somehow be worse. So, yeah, I think that they can win 10, 11 games. And depending on the matchup, I think they can win a playoff game. But in terms of Super Bowl contenders, I'm going to hold off on that until, we get to at least like the midway point of the year, at least like 6 weeks in where we have an idea of what Russ and or Justin Fields look like. But then again, if you want to be part of the conversation, absolutely. Keep the comments coming. If you want to be what's the word I'm looking for here? If you want to be a primary focused comment, you can leave a super chat. We'll get to yours before anybody else's. I appreciate everybody who's left super chats. It's very kind of you. I appreciate it. And again, just another way to support me. If you like the content, by the way, crossed over 1,100 subs over the weekend. Thank you again. We were at like between 400 and 500 when we started doing this every day during draft time, and to have 700 new subs in less than 2 months, man, that's awesome. So again, let's get to 2,000 before the season starts. That could be my new goal. We can get another 900, less like 890 subs over the next 2 months. I think that's pretty doable. So 2,000 before week 1, that would be awesome. So if you're not already subscribed, please do so. It's not just the Steelers stuff on here. It's the Pump Fake. Did the NFC West preview today with Doug Farrar. Great Doug Farrar. So you can go watch that as well as listen to it wherever you get your podcast. But again, Black and Gold Breakdown, Monday through Friday, every night throughout the rest of the offseason. And then once we get closer to the regular season, we'll figure out what that schedule will look like, but it'll be multiple times a week. You can bank on that. So I do appreciate everybody for watching. It's very nice. And again, leave your comments if you want to be part of the conversation. If you have any questions, absolutely fire away. But when it comes to, the Aiyuk stuff, man, like, we're going to keep talking about it until he gets moved. Like, I know I said on Thursday, it was like, until it becomes reasonable to talk about, I'm not going to talk about it. And then, of course, this stuff happens today where it becomes necessary to talk about. So Funny how stuff works. Omar's Burner. To rebuttal on your tweet, there are also Steelers fans under the age of 35. All think you can win Super Bowls without spending money on good players. That's fair. I think what I was going for with that was I think it's mostly people who are, of the older generation who were, were kids in the 70s, probably like around my dad's age. My dad's in his late 50s. People who were kids in the 70s and, are, just a little bit older and think that because they saw how that team was built. It was built through the draft. They won 4 Super Bowls, but that's not how the league works anymore, So it's a pain in the butt in terms of when people think that the Steelers can do what they did, 1974 and still have success in 2024. Because, look, it was 50 years ago, guys. It's not going to work. Things change. Times change. The league has changed very much. I immediately thought of that Scouts honor from Thursday when I saw it. Yeah, dude. I said it too. Hey, Scouts honor. No more. Drawing a line in the sand. And then Brandon Aiyuk saw that and said, hold my beer. I'd like to think, wouldn't it be funny if Brandon, the reason that he did it was like, Jarrett thinks he's going to stop talking about me, huh? Well, sorry, pal. Watch this. So that would be very funny. Now, I'm also not going to toot my own horn and think that Brandon Aiyuk watches this channel. But if he does, hi, Brandon. Really curious to see what the offense looks like. A lot of speed with options at the wide receiver position. I'll say this, man. I was there for OTAs. I was there for minicamp. One wide receiver consistently stood out, and it's the one that you think would consistently stand out, and it was 14. The rest of them, nothing consistent. And that unfortunately includes Roman Wilson. So you got to be able to look. I've said this for a while too. Omar is going to be patient, and he has been patient. But man, we're at June 17th, and I understand. Look, you got a month and a week until training camp, so you got a nice 5-week span until you're in Latrobe. I don't know how patient you can remain, man. And I've seen a lot of people who were saying, well, if Aiyuk was worth a first-round pick, they would have already done it. That doesn't necessarily make sense, especially at this point where, sure, you can argue that, his trade value is going to go down because he's clearly disgruntled. Well, if anything, that's only going to make more teams come in and say, oh, okay, well, we weren't necessarily going to try this before because we didn't think that we'd be successful. But now that he's clearly disgruntled and saying that the 49ers don't want him, we'll throw our name in the hat. So instead of having, 5 teams, you have maybe 12 teams. Then, naturally, there becomes a bidding war. So I don't really subscribe to the thought of, all of a sudden his trade value going down, because now, if anything, I think it's just it might go up because there's going to be more teams that are going to be trying to shoot their shot and get him because, they think that the 49ers don't want him. And so, if anything, I think that's going to open the floodgates more than it closes them. And look, again, if you're the Steelers, you're more than likely going to be taking a receiver in the first round next year anyway. So you may as well include a first-round pick as part of the deal. Again, it's the Family Guy mystery box thing. Oh, man, Brandon Aiyuk, this draft pick can be anything. It can even be Brandon Aiyuk. Dude, then just trade for Brandon Aiyuk. So there's plenty of reasons why they should do it, both for this season and beyond. A, they can afford him. They're projected to have, again, close to $90 million in free cap next year because, again, Cam Hayward, not currently on the books. James Daniels, not going to be on the books. He's going to sign elsewhere, or else they would have extended him. Najee Harris, then pick up his 5th-year option. Don't got to worry about that. Don't have a big quarterback under contract right now. The only 2 big, huge contracts that they have on their books next year is TJ Watt, Minkah Fitzpatrick. I think Larry Ogunjobi's projected to make between 11 and 13, but I'm pretty sure if they cut him, they can save money. So add that to the fund. And again, they'll have to use some money to pay Pat Fryermuth to sign Jalen Warren, and that's fine. None of those deals are going to be massive. So they're still going to have plenty of money to work with. And again, this also helps you evaluate the quarterback situation now, where, okay, Russell Wilson, you got George Pickens, Brandon Aiyuk, Pat Fryermuth, an improved offensive line, a good run game, good offensive coordinator, good defense. Show us something. And if he doesn't, all right, Justin Fields, you got George Pickens, Brandon Aiyuk, a good offensive line, a good running back duo, a good defense. Show us something. And if he can't, then you say, all right, well, Dak Prescott's a free agent. Let's go get him. So that's just my thought process on it. I see more comments coming in. I'll pick up where I left off once we're done reading those. Man, that's unfortunate. I think it's even a bigger reason to try and land another receiver. Can't make it that easy for the defense to scheme against us. Yeah, and look, I think that a lot of this offseason was just throwing darts at a board and hoping one of them would stick. Because all of these signings have been dudes that have had, somewhat productive seasons at one point. But like for Scotty Miller, I mean, his last really productive season was in 2020. Yeah, he helped the Buccaneers win a Super Bowl. And I like Scotty Miller, but he ain't going to be the wide receiver 2 in this offense. Same thing with Quez Watkins. He ain't going to be a wide receiver 2. Same thing with Calvin Austin. Calvin Austin had a fine mini camp. He ain't going to be the wide receiver 2. He ain't going to be your primary outside receiver. He's going to be a slot guy and a punt returner. He can be a productive slot guy, but he's wide receiver 3 at most. And then with Roman, I didn't see anything with Roman during team drills that made me say, oh, okay. Nothing consistent, at least. So that's probably not great. So, again, if anything right now, acquiring Aiyuk helps you this year, because obviously it makes your team better, and it also helps you evaluate the quarterbacks that you have. And if both of them just aren't it in terms of being the future, you cut ties, you got money to spend, go and get someone who is. If we don't include a first-round package for a deal for Brandon Aiyuk, we could just draft another receiver in the first round. Would be insane. Yeah, I guess so. I wouldn't necessarily see the need for it. Well, yeah, no, that's fair. I mean, it depends on what they'd give up, because let's say that it's a second and a third. Well, then, if you need a defensive tackle, then maybe you take the defensive tackle in the first round and then wait on, if you want to take another receiver. Because again, they just took Roman Wilson. And if you trade for Brandon Aiyuk, then you've got Brandon Aiyuk, George Pickens, Roman Wilson. You don't necessarily need another receiver there. So I would say, address other positions of need at that point before receiver. Allen had an interesting point about a Cam extension, that if they converted his salary this year into a signing bonus to allow more cap for next year. Yeah, I mean, they have plenty of options on what they want to do for that too. Look, personally, I'm going to say this. If I had to pick yes or no, do I want a Cam Hayward extension? I would honestly probably lean no. And it's nothing against Cam Hayward. It's been a fine player. He's also going to be 36. It just doesn't intrigue me. You drafted Keanu Benton, let him kind of take the reins, bring in a veteran in the offseason next year and draft at the position, and then go from there. But I got to tell you, it's not going to break my heart if he plays somewhere else, just personally. And I don't dislike Cam Hayward or anything like that. It's just I don't see. I think that they can live without him. And I personally just would rather see that money go elsewhere rather than to a 36-year-old defensive tackle. Just my thoughts. If you got Benton, go and get somebody, get your defensive line version of Elandon Roberts next offseason. A guy who comes in that you think is going to be fine, and then you hope just plays great and really exceeds the expectations. And by the way, they also have Dean Lowry on the defensive line, who's fine. Drafted Logan Lee. They still have guys, and again, none of them are elite, but that's why you have Benton, because you hope he's going to become elite, or at least becoming very good. So Personally, I'm not necessarily on board with a Cam Hayward extension just because I would like to see that money go elsewhere rather than toward a 36-year-old defensive tackle. Just my thoughts. I think that's the Aiyuk trade for more than just the price tag. We don't know how valuable that draft capital will end up being. Don't know the holes we need to fill in 2025 like a franchise quarterback. Well, again, when it comes to the quarterback situation, well, I'll start with the draft capital. It's the Steelers. You know it's not going to be a top 10 pick. So there's that. And if you're going to take a wide receiver in the draft next year anyway, you might as well just include it in a package for Aiyuk, who you know is great. And when it comes to the quarterback stuff, man, like, look, I don't want to see him draft a quarterback next year. I don't. Because TJ Watt's going to be 30 this October. Minkah Fitzpatrick's going to be 28. He's coming off an injury-riddled season. There's only so many more seasons that these guys have. I would rather see them go and make a move for a quarterback like Dak Prescott, who you can win now with, rather than, okay, we'll take a rookie quarterback that's going to take 2-3 years to develop, and then hope for the best, because then you're basically just punting on the rest of TJ Watt's prime, and I don't want that. You're basically just punting on the rest of Minkah Fitzpatrick's prime, and I don't want that. I would much rather see them stay in win now mode and do something similar to what the Rams did a few years ago, where, okay, we got the roster, but we need the upgraded quarterback. Go and get Matthew Stafford. Steelers can go ahead and get, and by the way, the Steelers wouldn't even have to trade anything for Dak Prescott if he hits the open market because he's scheduled to be a free agent. You wouldn't have to trade anything to do it. You have to spend money, sure. But in today's NFL, man, that's what you got to do. You can't spend no money and expect rich results. Like, you want results, you're going to have to spend. That's the name of the game. So I would much rather see them put themselves in a 2 to 3 year window that says, okay, we got Dak, we got Aiyuk, got Pickens for probably that 2025 year and maybe 2026 if you tag him. Got Watt, got Minkah, got Patrick Queen, young offensive line. Let's go. That's your core. That's a damn good core. Joey Porter Jr. as well is on a rookie deal. That's a good core. You can win with that. So I'd rather see them go that route rather than draft another rookie quarterback who's not going to be good. Like, I would much rather just see them get a guy that we know is good than cross their fingers and hope they get a CJ Stroud in the draft. So that's just my outlook on it personally. No difference between Arthur Smith and Ben Johnson of Detroit. Both have succeeded as OC. Smith just failed as a head coach. Oh, there's a big difference between the two. Ben Johnson is, as an offensive coordinator, he's the best non-head coach in the NFL because obviously Kyle Shanahan's very good and Andy Reid's very good. Arthur Smith, he had 2 really good years as offensive coordinator in Tennessee. But now it's just about rinsing that bad taste out of his mouth from Atlanta, where, again, he had bad quarterback play. There's only so much he could do with Marcus Mariota, Desmond Ridder, and Taylor Heineke. And even then, some of the stuff with Ridder, like the downfield passing stuff, was good. So I think Art's going to work out. The guys are very excited about it. Like Pat Freiermuth has talked a lot about how excited he is about it. Russ is already looking comfortable, especially like on the last day of minicamp. He's making anticipatory throws, showing that he's getting more comfortable in the offense. So it's going to be better. And again, that's a low bar, but it's going to be better. What happened to not saying Aiyuk? Well, like I said, when I said I wasn't going to say Aiyuk, unless something newsworthy related happens to Brandon Aiyuk, then I'm not going to talk about it. But of course, immediately after I say that, once we come back to doing the show, Brandon Aiyuk decides to do something and make me talk about it. So if this didn't happen, I wouldn't be talking about it. Jared, if you go to Latrobe and they trade for Aiyuk, would you please ask him if he watched the show and said, "Hold my beer," posting the TikTok? I'm probably not gonna ask him that. I will be in Latrobe for a good amount of days, so yeah, it'd be the usual suspects in terms of my buddies of content creators and writers. So me, Aaron Becker, Barbaugh, Allen. I assume Chris Carter will be down there. So it's gonna be the whole crew from all of our respective media outlets and whatnot that will be down there. But if I if and when I talk to Brandon Aiyuk, should he be traded, I'm probably not going to ask him that. But if he says something, I'll be sure to let you know. What has Ben Johnson done that Arthur Smith has not? Smith had a top run game, top scoring team that played in the championship game. So did Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson's done exactly that. If you look at just pure balance last year, Jahmyr Gibbs, I think, was like 53 yards away from having 1,000 yards on the ground. They would have had two 1,000-yard running backs and a quarterback who threw for, I think Jared Goff had 4,600 yards passing. Let me look that number up real quick just to get it right, but I know it was in the upper 4,000s. Let me just look here to get it completely right. Yeah, Jared Goff had just under 4,600 passing yards, and they had basically 2,000-yard running backs. So, but again, credit to Arthur Smith. I think he's going to be a good offensive coordinator. But in terms of just dominant balance, like the Lions were as dominant and as balanced as you could possibly get. The only other team that was like really that dominant and that balanced was the 49ers. So are we writing off Wilson and Fields as 5-year solutions? Not necessarily writing them off. This is, in terms of the Dak stuff, that's me saying, okay, getting Aiyuk helps you determine if Wilson and Fields are your long-term solutions, and you can figure that out really quick. And if you don't like how either of them look at the end of the season, then you can say, okay, we'll go get Dak. So I'm not writing either of them off as long-term solutions. I would feel more comfortable as Fields being a long-term solution just because Russ is 36. So he's certainly on the back nine of his career. He's coming off a fine season in Denver. Again, it was a top 10 quarterback in passer rating, 26 touchdowns, 8 picks. It was a solid year. It wasn't great, but it was solid. So no, I'm not writing them off. This is that was more or less just a hypothetical. Time give him $35 million. No, you're not going to get. Don't do that. The last thing that you want to do is give yourself a hole at edge rusher, because, well, one, they just paid Alex Highsmith last year. They're not going to get rid of Alex Highsmith. And two, outside of quarterback, and I guess left tackle maybe, edge rusher, you can say, is the second best important position on team anymore. Because if all these good quarterbacks have time to throw, doesn't matter. That's why a TJ Watt's so important. That's why a Myles Garrett is so important. That's why, all these guys are going so, higher and higher and higher in the draft, is because if you can get a guy that can consistently get to the quarterback, then you've got a real ace in the hole. So, yeah, don't get rid of Alex Highsmith, and don't pay Brandon Aiyuk $35 million. That's too much. But if he wants 30, I'd give him 30. Is it maybe, 1 or 2 million overpay? Sure, but they can afford to do it. Why does balance matter if you win? Could run the ball 80% of the time as long as we win. Okay, well, no team runs the ball 80% of the time. Steelers were third in the NFL last year, and they ran it 43% of the time. No team's going to run the ball more than 50% of the time. No team's going to – I can even look it up real quick. I want to say the highest run rate last year was 45%. And I think it was Baltimore, or Tennessee, one of those two. Point is that even the most run-heavy teams are still throwing the ball 55% of the time. And in terms of like the balance stuff, someone had asked what Ben Johnson had done that Arthur Smith didn't. I was just explaining what he did. He had the most dominant, balanced offense in the NFL outside of the 49ers. I was just explaining what he was doing. All pros don't become available every day, and there's a reason for that. If there's an opportunity to get one, I will personally never be against getting. Exactly. That's the thing. If you can get good players, you can get good players. Simple as that. Like, I will never be against the Steelers getting somebody who's great. And if it means trading draft picks, okay. I saw the Rams win a Super Bowl by doing that. I'm on board. Again, the different time where teams have gotten more and more comfortable trading and making moves for players that they didn't draft because they don't care if they drafted them, nor should they. Who gives a shit who drafted him? Is he good? Can he help us win? Okay, let's get him. So I don't care where they are. If the Steelers can get them and they're great, I'm on board. Go and get them. 30 and what draft pick? I'm confused on what you're asking there, Jeff. I don't know. I don't exactly know what you're asking. So if you want to follow up, I'll get back to you. If you've never heard of a hypothetical, I know you're being hypothetical with the 80% run. I'm just saying. Someone had asked, I want to say was it live? Yeah, Last King of Scotland had asked about the what Ben Johnson had done that Arthur Smith hadn't. I was only explaining what he had done. So I know that you're just being hypothetical. Brandon Aiyuk is wide receiver 1A and George Pickens is wide receiver 1B. No, I got to tell you, bro, it would be very definitive. Brandon Aiyuk is the number 1. George Pickens is the number 2. Again, I like Pickens, but Brandon Aiyuk is very much a tier above him, comfortably. DK is a better fit. No, he's not. I strongly disagree. Him and Pickens have pretty similar skill sets. I think it would be somewhat redundant to get DK when you have Pickens. But that's just my thoughts. First round. So 30 and I'm still confused on what you're asking, Jeff. You said 30 and what draft pick first round? I'm still a little bit confused on what you're trying to ask. So if you could just give me a long form question here, that would be helpful. Problem is DK is not available. Their head coach was on NFL Network saying how excited he was to use him this year. That is also true. Yeah, Mike McDonald's talked a lot about DK Metcalf. And in a Ryan Grubb offense, I talked about this today on the NFC West preview with Doug Farrar. They're going to let that ball fly. And Geno Smith throws a damn good deep ball, and having DK Metcalf catch those deep balls, that's going to be very helpful for their offense. So I don't think DK is going anywhere. Might have to leave after that GP slander. GP on San Francisco. Oh, yeah. No, don't get me wrong. George Pickens is good. I've never once said that George Pickens isn't good. I think a lot of people misinterpret what I say there. I don't think he's great. I think he's good. He's one of the best in the NFL when it comes to making the downfield catch. One of the best in the NFL when it comes to making contested catches. And he's very good at taking short receptions for large amounts of yards after the catch. But in terms of being, a route technician and a winner off the line of scrimmage, he hasn't shown to be that consistently at a level that you need to be at to be a true number 1. So I like George Pickens, don't get me wrong. But he's not Brandon Aiyuk. So, respectfully. Then I give a first round for Aiyuk when you can use that pick to draft. I don't even know who the hell Evan Stewart is, dude. Like, no, we're not going to play this hype with no. I'm not doing it. I'm going to say it one last time. Stop overvaluing draft capital. Stop doing it. If you're going to take a wide receiver in the first round anyway, you might as well package one to get Aiyuk. I've never understood the fascination with, you can't trade a first round pick. Like hell I can't. Watch me. If it's to get a top 10 receiver in the NFL, I'd damn well trade a first round pick. I've never understood the just overprotection and you can't trade draft picks. Like hell, there's no guarantees when it comes to draft picks. I know Brandon Aiyuk good. I know for a fact Brandon Aiyuk's good. I don't know if the draft pick's going to be good. I think we just really need to stop with the draft pick stuff, man. We really need to. Future wide receiver 3, nobody will bring up. Wait, our future wide receiver 3, nobody will bring up with Aiyuk GP. The only one, Dino Tomlin. He's where the hell does he play? Georgia. It's a red school. I want to say it's Georgia. Oh, by the way, Plaxico Burress, Ike Taylor, and Jerome Bettis, all three of their sons are playing at Notre Dame. They committed there, and all three of them, I guess all six of them took a picture. It was pretty dope. Wild as hell. Look, bro, I like George a lot, but he's not better than Brandon Aiyuk. They're going to want a draft pick for Aiyuk. You're paying him. Oh, okay. So Jeff is asking if I would trade a first-round pick and give Brandon Aiyuk $30 million per year. Yes. To answer that question, yes. And again, all 30 of that isn't going to go against the cap, just like all whatever the eventual quarterback contract isn't going to go against the cap. You know, there's ways that you can convert stuff that every team uses. So yeah, in total cash, Brandon Aiyuk will get $30 million per year. But in terms of the cap, it's not all 30 of it's not going to go against the cap. But Stewart will be better than Aiyuk. Look, man, there's no guarantee of that. I'm not entertaining any more Evan Stewart talk, whoever in God's name that is. Where does he even play? Sorry, Evan Stewart. What's Evan Stewart? If you're a fan of the show, I'm not trying to dunk on you. I'm just Evan Stewart. Where does he go? Stewart. Who's that? Football player from Oregon? Oregon. Okay, yes, I see. Yeah, I've couldn't tell you who he is. Yeah, if you give me the option of A, you can take a receiver in the first round next year or trade that first round pick as part of a package for Brandon Aiyuk, I'm very happily trading it for Brandon Aiyuk. I know that Brandon Aiyuk is very, very, very good. There's no guarantee of anybody in the draft being good. Hell, I was told that Quentin Johnson from TCU was going to be very good. He stunk. I was told that Jalen Reagor from, by the way, TCU was going to be really good. He stunk. Plenty of first-round receivers. Plenty. A lot of them have been bad or not come close to reaching the hype. Like Jerry Jeudy. I like Jerry Jeudy. Has not lived up to being a first-round pick. Corey Davis. I liked Corey Davis. Did not live up to being a top 5 pick. There's plenty of guys that get drafted in the first round. Laquan Treadwell was a first-round pick. Justin Blackmon was a first-round pick. There's plenty of receivers that get drafted in the first round that stick. I'm taking the guy that I know is really good. I don't care about the price tags. You are what you invest in. And if you're going to continue to be cheap at the position, you're going to continue to get cheap results. Get the guy who's great. That's the moral of today's show. Get the guy who's great. Worry about the price tag later. And if you got to pay some money, you got to pay some money. That's what it takes to be great in today's NFL. You got to spend money. Look at all the penny pinching teams. How great have they been? In any league, by the way. Hell, in Pittsburgh. How many Steelers or Pirates fans continuously bitch and moan about how cheap the team is? That's because they are. That's why they don't win. That's why they've been so bad. It's because they don't pay people. You got to be able to dish out some money. Ask the Titans how they feel about trading AJ Brown and using the first round pick. Exactly. Ask Mike Vrabel how happy he was when he found out that they traded AJ Brown. He was pissed. And again, I don't care that he's going to be cheap. Give me the great player. I will pay the great player. I don't care. I don't care if the guy's cheap if he's not good. Hell, you can pay me cheap. Doesn't mean I'm good. You can pay me whatever the hell. I'm not going to be good. I don't care. I don't care what the price tag is. Especially with the Steelers next year, because they have money. They can make it work. Both with, an eventual quarterback contract and the Aiyuk contract that will eventually come. It'll work. It'll be fine. If we can afford him, okay. They can afford him, yes. They very much can. They have a lot of money next year. Have a lot of money to work with next year. You either go grab a playmaker or you just stay put. They got enough role players at receiver already. Not all of them are going to make the team, though, man. So they need another outside receiver. Van Jefferson cannot be the starting number 2 outside receiver. They can't do that. Because teams will look at that and go, they're really going to do that? Okay, well, we'll just put 2 guys on George. C'est la vie. Yeah. So they got to do something. If it's not Aiyuk, then it's got to be somebody. And if it's not going to be Aiyuk, or even if it's not like a huge name, then I would expect it to be Treylon Burks, or I would expect it to be Michael Thomas. Definitely not the ones I want them to do, but it'll be somebody, man. With the new OC receiver coach, we may take a few weeks to gel regardless of who we add. I will say this about Zach Azzanni. Very vocal, very good receivers coach. The guys very much seem to enjoy him and respond to him. He's a very active wide receivers coach. I've enjoyed watching him throughout this process. Guy who's very active, very detail-oriented, which a few guys have really highlighted. I think Calvin Austin and Roman Wilson both highlighted that. George Pickens as well. Like this is a really good hire in Zach Azzanni as the wide receivers coach. Again, very detail oriented, very just like he's been a very welcome addition to this team. And watching him throughout this process, throughout the offseason program, I very much enjoyed watching him work with the receivers, and they seem to respond well to him. So I think with whoever's added, they will benefit from Azzanni, and they'll benefit from Arthur Smith too. Again, I haven't heard a bad word about either of them. And in terms of what this offense looks like so far throughout the offseason compared to what it's looked in the past few years, I mean, it's good. It's good. I'm very excited. I can live with Treylon Burks if all other fails. He's young and athletic enough. Yeah, if it's Burks, then they're banking on upside and the fact that they can get him for nothing. Like they got 2 7s that they got from Philadelphia for the Pickett trade. Trade one of them for Treylon Burks. I promise the Titans will do it. Promise. So if they can get him for practically hell. Even if you do get Brandon Aiyuk, why not do that? Treylon Burks is better than Van Jefferson. Now, you can keep Van Jefferson around because he's got outside and inside versatility. And then, I mean, at that point, if you can have a wide receiver room of Pickens, Aiyuk, Burks, Wilson, Calvin Austin, Van Jefferson, that's not bad. So even if they do get Brandon Aiyuk or a star receiver, I wouldn't be against also getting Treylon Burks and having him as the 3rd or 4th receiver. I think that would be fine. I'm excited to see what Aaron Curry does with the line. He was tremendous last year. Aaron Curry deserves a lot of credit. I think that's a guy I would not be surprised if he eventually gets like a defensive coordinator job elsewhere, and maybe in like 10 years, 5 to 7 years, we're talking about him being a head coach. Like he's very good. Aaron Curry is a guy that I would keep an eye on in terms of getting higher defensive positions, whether it be with the Steelers or elsewhere. But that's a guy that is going to continue climbing that tree. And again, in the next, if by 2030 he's a head coach, I won't be surprised. He's very well respected and very good at his job. So I very much like Aaron Curry a lot. I have a lot of respect for what he does. So he's a good Twitter follow too. I like Aaron Curry. All right, we're an hour in. I think this could be a good good place to put a bow on this for the evening. Again, some housekeeping stuff. If you are not already subscribed to the channel, please do that. If you haven't watched or listened to the latest edition of the Pump Fake, you can watch it on the channel or you can listen to it wherever you get your podcasts. Me and my boss at Touchdown Wire for USA Today, Doug Farrar, preview the NFC West. Very fun show, very good show. So watch it, listen to it, whatever you do. Written work, I did a lot of, in terms of like what I've said, I did a long form written version of it for Behind the Steel Curtain. So go read all of the work at Behind the Steel Curtain, which is SB Nation's dedicated Steelers coverage, of which I am the deputy editor. And then in terms of the USA Today front, a lot of good stuff on Touchdown Wire. I did a piece about the quarterback market, what guys should get paid, what guys shouldn't get paid, who I think will pay certain guys, who I think won't. So that is up on Touchdown Wire for USA Today right now. I'm also going to be doing top 20 assistant coaches in the NFL. So that'll be coming out this week. Yeah, a bunch of other stuff coming as well. Follow me on Twitter at JBaileyNFL to find it all. And again, if you're not subscribed to the channel already, please do so. We'll be back tomorrow. Talk all things Steelers. I'm sure that this will be part of the topic of discussion because literally this show, after I say no more Brandon Aiyuk stuff, Brandon Aiyuk puts himself in the news cycle to where I have to talk about him. So thanks, Brandon. If anything, though, this gives us something to talk about right now. So I got to tell you, I didn't know what we were going to talk about today. I didn't. I didn't know what we were going to do. I knew we were going to do a show, but it's June 17th. There's not really a whole lot going on. So it gave us, a nice hour of content. So thanks, Brandon Aiyuk. So we'll be back tomorrow. Figure something out in terms of what to talk about. And then later on in the week, I will do we could probably aim for Wednesday to do it, honestly. I'll do my favorite Steelers show. So you come along, name your favorite Steelers. We'll have a fun conversation just about it could be the obscure ones, the obviously great ones, the underrated ones. We'll have fun with that. And then me, DB, Aaron Becker, and I think Farbaugh as well. Yeah, I talked to Farbaugh about it again. And Zach Smith. So got 5 of us so far. I think that's probably where we're going to cap it. The all-time Steelers draft that will be taking place, I would say within like the next week and a half, 2 weeks. So a lot of fun stuff coming while we try to fill this void from now until camp. So, and again, if you're not already subscribed, do that to get all the notifications of all that. Once I get certain dates, I'll post it in the community tab. Excuse me, just to keep you guys updated. So appreciate you guys tuning in. I will see you guys tomorrow to talk more Steelers. Have a good night. Have a safe night. We'll chat soon.